Over the last century, archaeologists in China uncovered tens of thousands of ancient oracle bones, which are the bones of animals that carry some kind of inscription. The discoveries prove that during the Shang dynasty in ancient China, humans and animals were often sacrificed in order to change the weather. One inscription on an oracle bone read simply, "Should a man be burnt at the stakes? Will rain follow?" Most of these victims, anthropologists noted, were slaves, prisoners of war, beggars, cripples. The Chinese believed that by killing off these undesirables, they'd cause it to rain. And in that sense, the ancient Chinese had a lot in common with many other ancient cultures, including the Aztecs, who fought wars to secure new victims for their human sacrifices. And those sacrifices included the ritual killing of children on top of a mountain or a pyramid to honor Tlaloc, their god of rainfall. Thousands of years later, we have inventions like meteorology and the internet. So you might think that ritual sacrifices would have stopped, but in many parts of the world, they've persisted. In 2007, for example, Nepal's state-run airline was having a lot of issues with one of their Boeing aircraft, and their solution at the time was to sacrifice 2 goats in front of the plane to appease the sky god and ensure that the plane had safe passage. Executives were thrilled when the plane managed to take off and land, so I guess it worked. At the time, the story was mostly met with amusement in this country. It was unthinkable for anything like that to happen here, we thought. Sure, we have no room to make fun of them. I mean, they might sacrifice a goat outside of the plane, but we allow people to bring goats and other animals onto the planes as emotional support animals. As a passenger, I would prefer the sacrifice strategy personally. But at any rate, people clicked on the story from Nepal, maybe learned something, about customs there, had a good chuckle, and then went about their day. In retrospect, that was a mistake because, as it turns out, we were never that far away from hearing our own politicians claim that they too have the power to change the weather with their own offerings to the sky god. Somehow that line has officially been crossed in this country. And recently, a couple days ago, Hillary Clinton posted a tweet blaming Donald Trump supporters for the fact that the temperature has gone up this summer. Here it is, quote, "Hot enough for you? Thank a MAGA Republican, or better yet, vote them out of office." Now, you might recall that MAGA Republicans is an epithet that appeared out of nowhere about a year ago when Democratic Party consultants made it up. And already these MAGA Republicans are affecting the weather simply by existing. How are they doing that? One of the articles that Hillary Clinton cites in her tweet was published in Forbes, and the piece reported that, quote, "July 4th was Earth's hottest day in over 100,000 years. Now, that's quite a claim, since we've only been able to track temperatures for the past 140 years. According to NASA, quote, "There are too few data before 1880 for scientists to estimate average temperatures for the entire planet." That's what NASA says. And even for the past 140 years, it seems highly dubious to assume that the records are accurate enough to confidently declare that we experienced the hottest day in a century, or really a century and a half this month. Does anyone think that we actually have a precisely accurate idea of what the temperature was everywhere on the planet on, say, August 11th, 1893? Much less do we know the global temperature on August 11th, 1893 BC. So suffice it to say, the Forbes piece is not especially strong evidence to support the idea that Trump voters are somehow making it hot during the summer. So they have not even come close to proving that we've had the hottest day in 140 years, much less 100,000 years. And so they also have not proven that this weather is being caused by MAGA Republicans. So there are 2 things that need to be proved here, and they've done none of that. So let's take stock of what's happening. This is the kind of thing we often laugh about and then just kind of move on from, but we should really spend some time thinking about this. One of the most prominent Democrats in the country, a former Secretary of State, former presidential candidate, just sincerely blamed her political opponents for making it hot outside. And she did it on the basis of no evidence whatsoever. In fact, she lied about what little evidence she did present. Now, on some level, we're used to the climate change hysteria and the constant claims that the world is ending, so this might not seem like anything new. But what makes this so especially insane is that she's claiming that not only does human activity change the weather, but that a relatively small group of humans can bring about substantial changes in the weather in the span of just a few years. So this is not just human activity has caused global temperatures to rise by 2 degrees in 150 years or whatever. This is, we're having a devastating heat wave because of what my political opponents did last Tuesday. We are in full-on primitive superstition territory here. Blaming your enemies for a heat wave is the kind of thing that you'd expect to hear from a tribal chieftain in a loincloth in the Amazon somewhere. Though I think even most of them are too advanced at this point to believe in that sort of thing. But that's the level of science that senior Democrats are now pushing. What comes next? In every other culture that's gone down this path, ritual sacrifice is what comes next. Hillary Clinton's already identified the problem. It's predominantly middle-class Americans who voted the wrong way in the last election. They held too many cookouts. They drove trucks that were too big. Therefore, they're making it hot outside, and they need to pay. That's what she believes. How long before Hillary suggests building a giant pyramid and cutting the heart out of a middle-aged white guy in a red hat in order to appease Mother Earth? Or maybe just for fun? What's really alarming is that it's not just Hillary Clinton who thinks this way. The rest of the party and the media has been building to this conclusion for a long time. They're not just blaming human activity for the weather, they're blaming very recent and isolated human activity for the weather. This kind of thinking took off sometime around 2018 when the Climate Institute warned that people are changing the weather currently actively just by running their air conditioning units. The analysts determined that, quote, using and producing air conditioning equipment exacerbates climate change. And they proposed that in lieu of using air conditioning, people wear short sleeves and rely on blinds and curtains more often. Otherwise, they said the climate will change. And of course, the climate did change because climates always change because that's what climates do. The same year, the Washington Post ran an op-ed entitled, "Another hurricane is about to batter our coast. Trump is complicit." Complicit in a hurricane, which is like accusing someone of being complicit in a solar eclipse. So it took just a year after he came into office for the Washington Post to blame Trump for bad weather. Then 2 months before the last presidential election, as wildfires spread across California, Joe Biden endorsed that position, as totally deranged as it is. Watch.
The Defense Department reported that climate change is a direct threat to more than 2/3 of the military's operationally critical installations. That's what the military warned him. And this could well could be a conservative estimate. Donald Trump's climate denial may not have caused these fires and record floods and record hurricanes. But if he gets a second term, these hellish events will continue to become more common, more devastating, and more deadly.
If Trump gets a second term, Biden said, then, quote, these hellish events will continue to become more common, more devastating, and more deadly. In other words, we'll have more hurricanes, wildfires, and floods, and they'll be more dangerous if Donald Trump is in office for 4 years instead of Joe Biden. That's what he's saying. And that was Joe Biden in 2020. Has anyone followed up with him on that pledge now that he's been in office for several years? Has he declared victory over bad weather? Remember, he promised to cure cancer. I think cancer's still around, last I checked. Bad weather, we're still having bad weather. In fact, he and his allies, like Hillary Clinton, are actually telling us that the weather has only gotten worse. That's what they are telling us. He promised in 2020 that if Trump is not voted into office, then the weather will get better. It's going to get worse if Trump is voted into office, which would lead us to believe that if he's not, the weather will get better. Now they're telling us that the weather is only getting worse, which means I guess we can blame Joe Biden for that. Every wildfire, every hurricane is Joe Biden's fault. That's the precedent they've set. Grand Canyon University is an affordable private Christian university located in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. Praised for its culture of community giving and impact, Grand Canyon University integrates the free market system into their education, welcoming Christian worldview perspectives into over 320 academic programs, with more than 260 of those programs online. Grand Canyon University's online programs are designed to make earning your degree easy and accessible, no matter your age or stage in life. So why wait? If you're ready to take your education to the next level, find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu. That's gcu.edu. As many of you know, I wasn't super thrilled when my family got a dog, but they're obsessed with the thing, which is why, despite my own distaste for the mangy beast, I love making my family happy. Part of doing that is keeping this freeloader as healthy as possible, which is why I give my dog Rough Greens. Dr. Dennis Black, the founder of Rough Greens, is focused on improving the health of every dog in America. Little did I know before I got Rough Greens, dog food is dead food. Everybody knows that nutrition isn't brown, it's green. Let Rough Green boost your dog's food back to life. Rough Greens is a supplement that contains all the necessary vitamins, minerals, probiotics, omega oils, digestive enzymes, and antioxidants that your dog needs. You don't have to go out and buy new dog food. You just sprinkle Rough Greens on their food every day. Dog owners everywhere are raving about Rough Greens. It supports healthy joints, improves bad breath, boosts energy levels, and so much more. We are what we eat, and that goes for our dogs too. Dr. Dennis Black is so confident Rough Greens will improve your dog's health. He's offering my listeners a free Jumpstart trial bag so your dog can try it. A free Jumpstart trial bag can be at your door in just a few business days. Go to freeroughgreens.com/Walsh or call 844-ROUGH-700. That's free, RUFF, greens.com/Walsh or call 844-ROUGH-700 today. Oh no, now they say, well, the only way to keep the weather from continuing to get worse is to keep voting for them. This is the scam, and of course, none of it is remotely true. Here's the data on global annual deaths from natural disasters, including wildfires, volcanoes, extreme temperatures, droughts, earthquakes, floods. It covers the 1990s all the way to the 2010s. And if you look at a chart, you can notice how things are much safer now, by every metric, in fact. But you never hear about this. Instead, you're told that natural disasters are getting more common and more deadly. Currently, they're reporting that the fires in Canada are historic. They said the same thing about the California fires a few years ago. In fact, every time there's a wildfire now, it seems like it's historic. This has never happened before. The world has never seen anything like this. The truth is that wildfires used to be an order of magnitude worse than they are now. Ever hear about the Great Midwest Wildfires of 1871? Probably not. Somehow it's never mentioned. And that's strange because according to the National Weather Service, it was the deadliest series of wildfires in American history. Those fires killed thousands of people, destroyed millions of acres. How did that happen? How did it happen more than a century before the rise of the MAGA Republicans who are causing all of this? Are MAGA Republicans able to control the weather in the past too? How far does their sorcery reach? I guess we'll have to ask Hillary Clinton about that. But let's be charitable for a second. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that none of these outlets and politicians are lying. Let's pretend that we are in a climate emergency and everybody's about to burn up and die. Okay, let's just pretend that for a moment. Well, if that's the case, you'd think Hillary Clinton would be tweeting nonstop about China. You'd think that Joe Biden would be imposing sanctions. China's carbon emissions are more than double America's. In fact, China emits more carbon than every developed nation on the planet combined. Have they done anything to curb these emissions that are killing everybody? I mean, this is an act of war. If carbon emissions are causing wildfires and hurricanes in the United States, then this is like an act of war by China against the United States. So what is Joe Biden doing about it? I mean, China is building the equivalent of 2 large coal plants every week. This year, China's carbon emissions have already set a new record. But Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden don't seem concerned. Instead, they're demanding that you give up your gas stove and vote for them, or else. They leave China alone in the meantime. Now, we've seen this before. Remember when the left went on a campaign against plastic straws a few years ago, and they were warning that our plastic straws are polluting the ocean and killing the sea turtles? And that's the whole reason why when you go somewhere now, you get those flimsy paper straws that dissolve in your soda the moment you try to use them. Well, that's a sacrifice we got to make to keep the sea turtles healthy. Well, what they refuse to mention is that many Asian countries dump their trash directly into their rivers, sending millions of tons of garbage, straws included, floating out into the ocean in a giant conveyor belt-like system every year. Now we're seeing this same pattern play out with carbon emissions. Except in this case, our leaders are the ones who enabled China's rise as the world's largest polluter. 20 years ago, Bill Clinton approved the U.S.-China trade agreement and China's entrance into the World Trade Organization. He said that more trade with China would benefit Americans. He promised that it would not crush the U.S. manufacturing sector, quite the opposite. Quote, we'll be able to export products without exporting jobs, he promised. And how has that worked out exactly? But they refuse to take any responsibility for their role in creating the single greatest polluter on the planet. Someone who, by their logic and by their argument, is killing the planet and all of us. The Clintons and the rest of their party have displayed no self-reflection or regret whatsoever about what they did. That's because they don't regret it. They don't care about carbon emissions. And you know what? They don't really think that MAGA Republicans, whoever those are actively making it hot in the summer. At least the leftists in charge don't buy that stuff. It's all fake. Okay? They care about power to the point that Hillary Clinton is now babbling like an Aztec shaman. Except the Aztec shaman would at least acknowledge that he's practicing religion, not science. We are ruled by people who can't tell the difference. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.